When life gets quiet, most people fall apart. Not because something went wrong, but because nothing is happening. You know this space. No applause, no pressure from outside, no one watching closely, just silence and time. That silence exposes everything you have been avoiding. The habits you leaned on when things were loud disappear. The distractions fade. The noise that once pushed you forward is gone, and suddenly you feel heavier, not weak, not broken, just unsupported. You keep moving through your days, but something feels off. The motivation you once borrowed from urgency is missing. There is no deadline chasing you, no crisis demanding action, no external reason to push harder. This is where most people begin to drift. They slow down mentally. They loosen their standards. They stop sharpening themselves. Not all at once. Quietly, gradually, you start doing only what is necessary. You delay what requires effort. You tell yourself tomorrow will be better, but tomorrow stays quiet too. This is not failure on the surface. This is internal erosion. You still look fine from the outside. You still show up. You still function. But inside, discipline starts slipping. Focus gets weaker. Self-respect takes small hits. No one notices. That is the danger. When life is loud, pressure carries you. When life is chaotic, survival sharpens you. When life is demanding, fear keeps you alert. But when life is quiet, there is no external force holding you together. Only your internal structure remains. And for most people, that structure was never fully built. They depended on noise to move them. They depended on urgency to motivate them. They depended on expectations to keep them aligned. When those things disappear, so does their direction. The quiet feels uncomfortable. Not because it is empty, but because it reveals how much was never internalized. You feel the weight of having to choose effort without pressure. You feel the discomfort of moving without being pushed. You feel exposed to your own standards. This is where excuses grow. This is where comfort feels tempting. This is where average begins to feel acceptable. You are not failing because you lack ability. You are failing because silence demands ownership. No one is telling you what to do anymore. No one is validating your progress. No one is correcting your drift. That responsibility sits fully on you. And most people are not prepared for that. They confuse quiet with rest. They confuse calm with completion. They confuse peace with permission to loosen. But quiet is not rest. Subparts. Quiet is a test. It tests whether your discipline is real. It tests whether your standards are internal. It tests whether your identity is strong without witnesses. When no one is watching, habits reveal truth. When nothing is urgent, priorities become clear. When life slows down, character speaks. Most people fail here because they never trained for silence. They trained for reaction. They trained for survival. They trained for response. But they never trained for consistency without pressure. Quiet does not destroy you. It exposes what is missing. And what is missing is usually self-directed discipline, not motivation, not inspiration, not excitement. Structure, standards, internal order. When life gets quiet, you are left alone with yourself. And if you never built a strong relationship with discipline, that silence becomes uncomfortable. This is where drifting begins. This is where standards soften. This is where long-term goals lose urgency. Not because you stopped caring, but because no one is reminding you to care. The truth is simple and heavy. Most people need noise to stay alive internally. Silence asks you to lead yourself, and that is where most people collapse. Here is the truth most people never accept. Quiet is where real strength is built. And that is exactly why it breaks so many. When life is loud, effort feels forced. When life is demanding, action feels necessary. But when life is quiet, effort becomes a choice. That choice exposes everything. Without pressure, you see how often you avoid discomfort. Without urgency, you see how weak your follow-through has been. Without chaos, you see how easily your mind looks for escape. This is not punishment. This is clarity. Quiet removes excuses. There is no one to blame, no situation to point at, no external reason to slow down. Only you remain. Most people mistake this moment as emptiness. They feel lost. They feel unmotivated. They feel unsure. But what they are really feeling is the absence of structure. They were never driven. They were carried. Carried by deadlines. Carried by expectations. Carried by fear of consequences. Once those disappear, momentum collapses. This is where discipline proves its value. Discipline does not need noise. Discipline does not need pressure. Discipline moves even when nothing demands it. Quiet strips away borrowed energy. It forces you to generate your own. That is uncomfortable. That is unfamiliar. That is why most people retreat. They reach for distractions. They fill silence with entertainment. They dull awareness instead of sharpening it. Because awareness requires honesty. And honesty demands action. Quiet shows you the gap between who you say you are and how you live. It shows you how inconsistent effort really looks without witnesses. It shows you how fragile motivation becomes without external reward. Most people fail here because they confuse feelings with direction. They wait to feel driven. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel inspired. Quiet does not provide feelings. It provides space. And space demands structure. Without structure, space becomes emptiness. Without standards, space becomes decay. Without discipline, space becomes comfort. Comfort is where potential goes to sleep. Quiet does not mean stop. Quiet means no one is pushing anymore. This is where self-respect must take control. Self-respect moves even when no one is watching. Self-respect maintains standards without validation. Self-respect does not negotiate with comfort. The mind resists this phase. It craves stimulation. It craves reassurance. It craves noise. But growth does not announce itself. Growth happens quietly, slowly, consistently. Most people fail because they underestimate silence. They see it as nothing. They treat it as waiting time. They waste it. But quiet is the training ground. It is where habits are formed without applause. It is where identity becomes stable. It is where discipline becomes automatic. If you cannot move when life is calm, you are not strong. You are dependent. Dependency feels fine when life is busy. It collapses when life slows. Quiet asks one thing from you. Internal leadership. No reminders, no pressure, no external reward. Just action because it is who you are. Most people never develop that. So when silence arrives, they drift. They soften. They lose edge. Not because they are incapable, but because they never trained this state. Quiet is not the absence of opportunity. It is the absence of excuses. And that is why it exposes weakness so clearly. This is where everything changes if you allow it. Quiet is not something to escape. Quiet is something to master. When you stop fighting the silence, you start using it. When you stop waiting for noise, you begin leading yourself. This is the moment discipline becomes personal. Not reactive, not emotional, personal. You decide your standards before the day begins. You move without needing momentum. You act without needing urgency. Quiet sharpens focus. It removes clutter. It forces precision. Every action becomes intentional. Every habit becomes visible. Every excuse loses power. This is where identity locks in. Not when things are hard, but when things are calm. Anyone can push under pressure. Few can stay sharp without it. You build strength by doing what needs to be done when nothing demands it. You build respect by holding the line when comfort invites you to step back. You build control by choosing effort when no one is watching. Quiet is where discipline turns permanent. It is where self-trust forms. It is where momentum becomes internal. You stop needing motivation. You stop waiting for signals. You stop reacting to circumstances. You operate from structure, from clarity, from principle. This is not dramatic. It is not exciting. It is solid. Days become simple. Standards stay high. Energy stabilizes. You no longer fear slow periods. You no longer chase stimulation. You no longer depend on chaos to feel alive. Quiet becomes your advantage. While others drift, you build. While others relax standards, you sharpen them. While others wait for something to happen, you decide who you are becoming. This is how consistency is born. This is how confidence becomes real. This is how control returns. Not through noise, not through pressure, not through motivation, through discipline in silence. Most people fail when life gets quiet because they never step up internally. You do. You do not slow down because no one is watching. You do not soften because nothing is urgent. You do not drift because the path feels empty. You move because that is your standard. Key, you act because that is your structure. You stay sharp because that is your identity. Quiet no longer weakens you. It confirms you. And from that place, nothing shakes you. If this message grounded you, stay here. Return to this channel when noise fades and discipline matters. Listen again when life slows and standards are tested. Subscribe to keep your mind sharp in silence. Save this message and replay it when comfort pulls you off track. Build consistency here. Strength grows where attention stays.